is the greatest confirmation that the more serious SSP discussion was right on the money in the establishment of Space Force. Now, when it first came out, oh, gee, certain political opponents of it, they even came out, Hollywood even came out with their TV series making fun of Space Force. And, gee, it's a real thing. It's here to stay. It is a branch of the military. And what that means is in the standing up of Space Force, for those who didn't believe that there was any kind of classified military space ops going on before Space Force, I got news for you. You can count on it existing henceforth. Okay, now we come from the school of thought that they've been doing classified space ops. Now, I've said it before. It's my opinion that all the classified space ops that had gone on before the standing up of Space Force, this just gets folded into the history of the space ops and will become part of the background leading up to Space Force. Again, if fine, if you don't want to buy that it was going on before Space Force, you can't deny that it will be going on under Space Force, because we know that all the other military branches have classified ops, right?
Yeah.
What makes people think that Space Force ain't going to do that? Come on. Of course they're going to do it, because in my opinion, they're going to continue what the U.S. has been doing since the late 40s anyway with this. But the downside to this that I'm talking about is, because of that, it might be harder to get a look and have that same legitimate SSP discussion that I referred to, that up till 2015 that was getting more prominence. Because now, if it's a part of an actual active branch of the military, things will be clamped down on even more so. Because think about it, classified space stuff before a Space Force, they had to really hide it, right? Now they can be more, well, of course there's classified ops in space. We have, the Navy has classified ops. We don't tell you about the details of those, nor what the Army or Air Force is doing, and you accept it because these are very publicly known organizations. Same thing with Space Force. Now they can just even more clamp down on even more sources of information on what we're really doing secretly in space, because they can just say, well, of course that's clamped down. Of course you can't get that, because that reveals what our new branch is doing. So it might actually, because of that, ironically, be more difficult now to return to a legitimate SSP conversation. There's nothing wrong with a speculative discussion, because the honest person says, hey, this is a hypothesis. This is what I think. I don't know whether I'm right or not. And this is where the storytellers have kind of ruined things, is them coming out saying, oh, well, I know this to be true because of my insight. See, there's the line. That's the crap we need to, yeah, right. Okay, you're anonymous insider, or you were a time jump in this, that, and the other. No, BS. And the acceptable side of the line is where people say, yeah, this is my hypothesis. I don't know for sure. I could be wrong about this or that. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But I hope that this whole thing, or this revelation from Corey Good's deposition, I hope this does, put the nail in the coffin on the discussion, these fantasy discussions. I would like to see it have a longer term effect and impact on the community, in that this kind of crap just won't get started again. But unfortunately, there's dummies out there that just want to hear these stories and believe it. And I don't know any more polite way to put it.
I agree 100%. So you've written several books on this. You've written books on the Sonora Aero Club and on NIMSA, good connections for a lot of this technology and a lot of these UFOs actually being our technology and the technology that we've created on our own. So I think that this is a very important time to kind of go back and touch on that. And I know that we've talked about it in previous interviews, but I think right now it's the most important thing to really be discussing, because I do believe that there is a real element to this, but again, it's just been overshadowed by all of this bullshit nonsense, and that's served as a cover so that the governments and the three-letter organizations don't have to take responsibility or reveal any of the technology that they have created on their own.
Right, right. Well, if you'll notice, a couple of years back, I think I started referring in this discussion to, I started calling it classified space ops, to get away from using the SSP secret space program moniker, because as you said, that's been kind of tainted by the nonsense. But when you go back and look through the history of aviation in the United States in particular, which naturally leads to space, space aviation, as it were, you begin to you really begin to see where the pursuit of going into space was actually there much earlier in a serious way. We're not talking about, well, yeah, everybody knows the rocket engineers and stuff. When they were little boys, they read Jules Verne, blah, 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 and it inspired. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the actual, aviation scientists dating back to the late teens and early 1920s. They were seriously thinking, how do we get into space? Okay, they were pursuing this in aviation medicine. Now, a lot of people, myself included, I would never have guessed that aviation medicine would reveal as much about what I think was classified, space ops as it does. And one of the things that you'll learn is when you look at Operation Paperclip and you discover that the seed for that, the origin for that, wasn't about the bomb, getting the bomb scientists. The origin of Operation Paperclip started with one of our top aviation medicine scientists and pilots, Colonel Harry Armstrong. At the end of World War II, he was, before the war, the German aviation scientists and aviation medicine specialists, and the Americans and the Europeans, they all knew each other. They were going to the same scientific conferences and they were sharing notes and ideas. And then, of course, politics and the war happens. And at the, as we're approaching the end of the war, the Allies are controlling, there's an area, it's in Heidelberg, and they put together this list of aviation scientists of the Luftwaffe of Germany that they want to get their hands on and bring to the United States. So the brainchild of Operation Paperclip came out of the aviation medicine field, and it was to get the German experts that had these big reputations that Armstrong and the others knew personally. They wanted to get them in America for what was clearly going to be a post-war pursuit of putting man in space. And this was the impetus for Operation Paperclip, not just the bomb, not even primarily the bomb. And when you look more closely at the way it went down, there's reason to suspect that actually Operation Paperclip was a German idea. In other words, that the scientist associates of Armstrong said, hey, we have an idea. Why don't, you bring us, to the States and we'll work for your side, that kind of thing. And yeah, we'll help you put man in space. So it really dates back to before Roswell, the serious pursuit of this. Now, some people know, those who particularly who've read my book, Shimmering Light, that my hypothesis I propose reflects what I was just talking about. And my hypothesis for Roswell is that it was not an extraterrestrial incident. In my hypothesis, all the elements, the historical elements that this is a matter of record, all the elements are in place in New Mexico for Roswell to actually have been a first classified attempt at putting man in space by the United States working with the Paperclip German aviation scientists and aviation engineers.